All right, guys, in this video, I'm going to talk a little about a very controversial topic, basically old school versus new school. Modern jiu-jitsu versus old school jiu-jitsu, right? First of all, the term modern changes all the time, right? What is modern now is going to be old a few years down the road, so it's really a meaningless term. I never saw it that way. I don't think in terms of whether something is old is better than what is new. I've always looked at it in terms of, is it efficient and does it work? I'll give you an example. The rear naked choke, pretty old move, right? So some of you may not know this, but in Brazil, the rear naked choke is called mata Leão, which means lion killer, right? Because Hercules killed a lion with the choke. You know, allegedly that choke. So it gets to show how old that choke is, right? It goes back to Greek mythology. And it's highly efficient. It's the #1 submission in MMA. It's the #1 submission in submission wrestling. So it's a very common submission. It's very old, but it's highly efficient. So no one really calls it old school, right? And then some people go like, you know, but what's new is going to be better than what's old. So like something that is modern, let's say a new open guard sweep is going to rank higher than a closed guard sweep, right? And again, when we look at statistics, what we see is, in fact, a lot of times what we call old school jiu-jitsu is what's most common in competition, not necessarily what's new. That's not to say that what's old is better than new. Once again, you got to keep your eye on what is actually working versus, you know, what is pretty aesthetically pleasing or what happens to be what you know, which is a common mistake people make, right? So a lot of the old school crowd goes, what I know is better because it's all I know. So if you don't know something, let's say you're not familiar with the berimbolo sweep or a 50-50, you put it in the category of something that's not real jiu-jitsu, right? Real jiu-jitsu is always whatever you happen to like. So if you like takedowns and top game, that's real jiu-jitsu. If you like leg locks, that's real jiu-jitsu. If you like open guard, that's real jiu-jitsu. And that's a terrible way of looking at it. You have to look at what's actually working. The only question that matters is, does it work, right? So old school guys make that mistake. They neglect a lot of the new school stuff because they don't know it. So they refuse to learn it. Very, very common mistake. A lot of the young school guys, they go, old school stuff doesn't work, and they only keep their eyes on what they consider to be new because they believe that that's better than old. Well, that's not really the case. A lot of the stuff that's old is what's most commonly used in competition. In fact, if you look at the best competitors in the world and you pay close attention and you get rid of confirmation bias, you're going to see that overwhelmingly what they do is what's called basic jiu-jitsu. That's the vast majority of what we do. It's just that there's this hyper focus on what happens to be new and trendy, and people are under the impression that that's the whole story. In other words, fashion is a terrible way at looking at this. You should not be guided by fashion. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of data. There's not a lot of statistics on jiu-jitsu. Sometimes it can be difficult to find out what's actually happened, but you should not be following fashion. I'll give you an example. I remember there's a website, I think it was BJJ Heroes a while ago. They did a statistics on jiu-jitsu and they want to find out some of the most common sweeps, right? The black belt level, world championship black belt level. And they found, I think it was closed guard and half guard. They're the most common ones. And this is when people were obsessing over berimbolos. And berimbolos happen to be something like 4 or 5% of the sweeps. So it just goes to show that what is commonly perceived as the most successful sweeps may not be what's actually most common at the high level, right? So I really urge people to pay attention to what's actually working, not what's fashionable. Now, whether it's old or new is completely irrelevant. There are very old moves like the rear naked choke and an armbar that are very common in any curriculum. You see them all the time in competition, yet they're very old. And yet there's a lot of new stuff that's very interesting that should be assimilated. There's no reason why you should say no to a new move because, you know, it's not real jiu-jitsu or because you maybe don't know or your instructor hasn't taught you. You should be always absorbing new knowledge. It doesn't matter where it comes from. It doesn't matter if it comes from this country or that country, this gym or that gym. The only relevant question is, does it work? Whether it's pretty, ugly, old or new, is completely irrelevant. All right, so once again, guys, old school, new school, it doesn't matter. It's all jiu-jitsu. The only relevant question is, does it work for you? Once again, what works for me may not be what's best for you. A lot of times, you know, instructors are forcing down your throat what they like, and I'm of the opinion you should show as much as possible and let the students choose the arsenal, choose the weapons they want to use in their jiu-jitsu journey, right? If you like this channel, guys, like, subscribe, comment, share, let your friends know, spread the word if you believe it holds value. If there's any question you have regarding anything I said, please comment, let us know. If there's anything that you would like us to work on specifically, maybe like you would have a question about old school versus new school, something that I didn't really cover in this video, let us know. I am happy to share my knowledge with you, happy to share my experience, and hopefully help you better understand jiu-jitsu as a whole.